Hey guys, Argent here with a cash-in video. Just going to talk a bit about Pokemon Go, just give you a little review. I don't really do normal reviews that often. I normally only do normal reviews if I can't really think of anything political or kind of thematic to say. Um, People kind of got angry when I used to do those, so this one I'm just doing because I actually have a fair amount to say about it. So for those of you who don't know, I'm going to explain a bit how the game works. Pokemon Go is an augmented reality game that Nintendo has released through, I believe, Nintech, which I think is a subsidiary of Nintendo, for the Android and what is it, iOS, whatever they have on iPhone. I've never owned an iPhone. I think it's iOS. So they've released it for those two platforms. I think this is the first Nintendo game to ever be released on a mobile phone. They were kind of hesitant about it for a while, and I can really see why, considering they thought it might detract from their DS and 3DS. I think with like the release of the new 3DS, and I have a new 3DS and I really love it. The new 3DS is so much more powerful graphically, and the games are so much better than what you'd find on a mobile phone. There's not really kind of the same threat of smartphones taking over their space anytime soon. They're having good sales, so they might as well expand. So rather than kind of try to compete with the 3DS, they decided to do something different, and they decided to fulfill every kid's dream, including mine. For those of you who don't know, so I'm in my mid-20s and I grew up with Pokemon. I remember watching the first episode on TV. I remember watching the first season as it aired. Geez, we're in like season 17 or 16 or 17. When I was a kid, I remember, I think it was like my 8th birthday or some 9th or 10th birthday. My parents got me Pokemon Yellow with the Pikachu colored Game Boy, which I foolishly sold a while back for like $20. That was like 15 years ago. I was young and stupid then. But yeah, so I remember getting it. The Pokemon games were really kind of like some of the first mobile games that were like real games. They were full games. They were really long. They were very kind of complex. There was a lot of replayability to them, and it's no kind of wonder that Pokemon has kind of continued on so long as a franchise. Um, it's kind of, I guess it probably makes Nintendo as much as all their other franchises put together. And it kind of represents what's kind of best about Nintendo and kind of what's worst about Nintendo. What's worse about Nintendo is they're very money grubbing. They like to make a million different versions of things. Like the Pokemon games are kind of a ripoff in a lot of ways because they'll make Red and Blue, which are basically the same. They'll just have 6 Pokemon in one and not 6 in another. They'll make amiibos. They'll make like the e-reader. They'll make kind of all this gimmicky shit as a way to make more money. Nintendo are kind of whores that way. At the same time, the other, I guess, kind of big issue with Nintendo is they've never really been good at plots. It's weird because they're capable of doing it because they make Fire Emblem, and the Fire Emblem games normally have good plots, complex, well-written characters. None of the Zelda games really excel at plot or characters for that matter, but they're very good at world building. Really, kind of the best first party things that Nintendo makes is with regards to kind of plot and characters. I find the Paper Mario games, both 64, Thousand Year Door, have very kind of surprisingly well developed stories and well developed characters. So they're capable of it. So my point is that's kind of like the downside. On the upside, Nintendo's always been very wholesome. There's very little kind of morally objectionable about their games. There's not really anything blatantly immoral you'd do. I mean, they have violent games like Zelda's violent, but there's nothing really kind of like morally questionable about it. You're a hero who's going out to save the princess. You're going out to save the world. You don't have like a bunch of just random like sex everywhere. The violence tends to be you kill monsters. It's not like you can gun down random people or whatever. You're killing monsters. You're saving people. The Mario games are all just kind of they really kind of focus on like fun, and it's kind of wholesome fun. I mean, obviously there's violence in them, but they haven't really gone kind of the Call of Duty route, and we're just gonna kind of make things as violent and as explicit as possible. And Pokemon Go, I think, kind of really summarizes those two kind of disparate things. It's kind of the best and worst of Nintendo in one. So without further ado, let's talk a bit about the game. So here's some footage from the game. So let's talk a bit about the game. So this is basically all there is to see. I can't really record gameplay footage since it's on my cell phone, and that's where my video camera is. So here's basically how it works. You have this GPS map. These little blue things are Pokestops. Now, this is a virtual reality kind of overlay, so it's kind of like your standard GPS Google map. But the Pokestops you visit, and for each time you visit one, you get some items, like maybe some Pokeballs, maybe some potions, eggs, that kind of thing, and you get experience points. Pokemon also cluster around the Pokestops, so that's where you go if you want to catch some. So, I mean, that all makes sense. So, you got the Pokestops, and what's kind of interesting about them is every Pokestop is a landmark of some description. It's something interesting. They're not just like random plots in the ground. Like I work downtown Toronto and I like to play this game at lunch, so it'll be like, there's a mural maybe. There's like some piece of urban art, and it's not just graffiti, like it's like an actual mural. There'll be a statue. There'll be an architecturally interesting building or something. And it kind of, like, I was going through around the area where I work, and it was telling me to go down this alley. And I'm like, I don't know. But then I looked, and it was actually like a kind of a mini street, and the walls were all full of kind of like art and stuff. And I never would have gone there otherwise. So that's pretty cool. And, like, it makes you notice statues and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. And because there's so many of them, particularly in cities, if you're kind of like, do what I do and you go out for a walk at lunch, you kind of change your route around a bit to try and hit more Pokestops and to try to catch more Pokemon. So you go and do that, and it's kind of interesting, I mean, because you kind of discover some stuff. It kind of encourages you to walk further, to kind of take a different route. And there's been some bad stuff with that, but overall, I think it's very positive. I mean, people are kind of glued to their phones, but to be perfectly honest, I think it's very naive if like people are glued to their phones anyways. To be perfectly honest, it's not as if we didn't have Pokemon Go, people wouldn't. And even when you start the app, you get why is this not working? Okay, well, you can kind of see it. There's a Gyarados that's eating someone, and it says, "Look out. Be aware of your surroundings." I mean, people are glued to their phones anyways. If anything, I actually look at my phone less, because if I'm not catching a Pokemon and I'm not using a stop, there's no real need to be looking at it. So that's pretty neat. So I think kind of what's really good about it is it encourages kids to get outside. A lot of people I've talked to have been getting out more. So a lot of people who are NEETs or who are kids or whatever, they don't get enough exercise, they don't get enough sun. And so you have this fun app that encourages you to kind of go outside, go exploring, kind of go to different places. So, I mean, it's good. It's exercise, it's giving kids some sun and fresh air. And it's doing it in a fun way that doesn't feel like exercise. And that's kind of one of the big issues with exercise, is people just don't like doing it. They find it boring. It's not interesting for them. Like, my exercise is I walk. I like to go for walks because it's a good time to think. It's I can listen to an audiobook and just focus on it and just get away from the world. And I will do that, like, if I'm back when I was in NEET, I'd go for an hour walk every day without fail, because I enjoy it. if you were trying to get me to go to a gym, I just don't go because I don't enjoy it. It's a hassle for me. To go to a gym for an hour takes about 2 hours once you pack everything up and get changed and stuff. So it's a way to get kids outside. I've seen people say, well, it's not like heavy duty cardio, it's light cardio. Hey, you take what you can get. Part of the problem is these people never get outside at all. So, I mean, that's good. Someone made the joke, Nintendo's done more to combat childhood obesity in 48 hours than Michelle Obama's done in the last 8 years. And I think that's true. So when you're walking around, Pokemon will just kind of appear. Like there's a Squirtle there. You click on it and you enter this capture mode. I can't use the capture mode properly because the gyroscope in my phone is broken. But there's an alternative you can use. Let me see if they have a picture of it. No, they don't. But yeah, there's an alternative mode you can use. It's just like a generic screen for capturing Pokemon. So if for some reason your camera's broken, you can still use the app. If your camera and gyroscope work, you kind of just, once it detects a Pokemon, you just kind of like scan around and it'll come up in your camera and you like use the Pokeball icon and you capture it. So it's kind of like catching Pokemon in real life. And that's pretty fun. I mean, what kid who grew up in the 90s didn't dream of catching Pokemon and being a Pokemon master in real life? So it's a pretty great idea. So is the game any good? I guess is the question. Yes and no. It's a really good concept, but they really screwed up in a lot of ways. The servers don't work. I live in Canada. It's not released in Canada. They only released it in a couple countries, and the servers were overloaded the first day. Now, lots of good games and well-made games have the servers overloaded the first day, but they seem to just completely have no idea what they're doing. And I've just heard reports that even in the countries where it's officially released, it's complete just bullshit. It doesn't work. I know when I go to Pokestops, they don't load half the time. You can't access them. It often will just say come back later. The app crashes constantly. Very often, once you catch a Pokemon and that little ball has finished wiggling, the game will just crash and it doesn't save your progress. And a lot of people have lost kind of rare and valuable Pokemon that way. And it's just a clusterfuck. And they haven't released in a bunch of countries. And you go, well, Argent, no one could have foreseen how big this game would be. And I think to a certain extent that's true. You have it as like the single most popular app in the world at the moment. Bigger than Twitter. Pokemon Go has surpassed porn as the biggest search on the internet. But at the same time, it's the first Nintendo app. It's a free game. It's freemium. You can buy stuff in game. None of the stuff you can buy in game is really that interesting though, and you have to grind a fair bit. But it's entirely possible to play the game without buying anything. Buying stuff doesn't even really speed it up much. Kind of the main thing you use to level Pokemon, Stardust, you can't buy in the stores, so the store's not really helpful at the moment. So you kind of got this free-to-play Pokemon game that's being released for mobile, that's an augmented reality game that fulfills hundreds of millions of people's childhood dreams. You think you might have a hit on your hands? You think you could have played it a little risque and just bought some more server room? No. So it doesn't work most of the time, etc. But there's a lot of like other interesting things, like where the type of Pokemon that show up depend on where you are. So if there's a pond nearby, water Pokemon will show up there. If there's grass Pokemon will show up. In urban areas, you'll have certain kind of Pokemon like Zubats and Drowsies and stuff, and kind of I've seen Magnemites. So it's all kind of based on that. There's also gyms, which is kind of another big problem with this game. The combat is complete shit. The combat is atrocious. It's hard to even explain. Basically, instead of levels, Pokemon have BP or battle points, which are random. They're like, you can get a Pokemon that has 10 battle power, or you can get a Pokemon that has 300 battle power within the same species. So you can catch a Pidgey with 200 battle power and a Pidgeotto with 100 battle power, and it doesn't really scale with evolution that well. So it's entirely kind of random in that respect. Also, each Pokemon has 2 moves, and that's completely random. And when they evolve, they get 2 new random moves. And if you wind up getting shitty moves, then you're just fucked and you have to get another of that Pokemon. So you kind of need a lot of the planets to align for it to work. Combat is kind of a button masher. I think there's a way you can dodge. It doesn't really work. Basically, you just shoot each other with attacks until one person wins, which is normally whoever has the higher battle power and or the higher HP, and if one's super effective against the other. So to fight gyms, players will take over a gym, normally the strongest player in the area, and then people have to challenge them and try to beat the gym, and then they become the new gym leader, is kind of how it works. You need to be fairly high level to do that. I don't have strong enough Pokemon yet. So that's kind of bullshit. There's only Kanto Pokemon around, which is fine. At least they have all the Kanto Pokemon in game, except for maybe the legendaries. So, I mean, that's not like a huge deal. I'm okay with that. But it's I really hope at some point they add in, sometime soon, they add in at least the Johto Pokemon. And eventually get the rest of them into the game. I also hope they fix a lot of things. There's a lot of room for expansion, a lot of features that need to be revamped. I'm fairly hopeful, though, that they'll improve the game just because they got a shitload of money. They're going to make, like, hundreds of billions of dollars off of... Well, not maybe 100 billion, but they're going to make billions of dollars off of this game. Once they probably figure out a way to monetize it properly, because monetization is shit at the moment. Even if they introduced like a $5 a month thing that gives you like, I don't know, plus 30% experience and like plus 30% Stardust, I mean, I'd pay for that. I occasionally buy stuff in freemium games like World of Tanks or Clicker Heroes or something like that. So I'd be down for that. So it's the game is not like great at the moment. It's a lot of fun. It's not really deep, and it's buggy as hell. But given the amount of money and interest it generates, I mean, look at like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was kind of lame when it started out, but they've upgraded the graphics over the years. They've completely revamped the class system. They've added in all kinds of like new gameplay, like new worlds. They've done that with EVE Online, and if this continues to be a moneymaker, they'll keep upgrading it, and they'll fix the issues with it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I know I kind of rambled, but I kind of covered Pokemon, Nintendo, and Pokemon Go in this video. So I'll talk to you guys later.